will officially begin. So yeah, welcome everybody. Thanks so much for tuning in this evening. We got a pretty fun plan for the evening tonight. I think Caleb's going to be starting us off in a moment and sharing some teachings around the sucker moon, as well as talking a little bit about working with wigwas, working with birch bark. And that's going to be one of our plans for our up and coming weekend in person on the land in Rama. And then I'm going to be taking it over from Caleb, and we're going to dive into a topic that's, yeah, I'm going to say this about every topic we get into, but like one of my favorites, which is interpretive bird language. And by interpretive bird language, I literally mean like interpreting what are the birds actually saying. So not just like they're making pretty sounds and that's a robin and that's a song sparrow and that's a cardinal, but like what is the cardinal telling us about? Is it singing about the weather changing? Is it singing about the hawk that's flying or the domestic cat that's stalking around the corner? So we're gonna kind of start diving into the next level of tracking, and it's tracking the language of the birds through the sky. So that's our plan for tonight. We're gonna be about an hour and a half. And if anyone's tuning in for the first time, just so you know, this is part of the Survive-a-Rama program that Ben has started through the Rama Land Stewardship Guild. So we're basically meeting on Zoom here once a month and exploring some teachings around the 13 Anishinaabe moons. Caleb sharing that part, and then I'm weaving in some fun naturalist stuff. And then we have an in-person gathering every month. I do want to cover a few logistical things really quick, and then I'm going to pass it over to Caleb to kick us off. So on a logistical note, I'm going to throw in the chat there. If you're not on the Rama Land Stewardship Guild Facebook page yet, we would love to have you over there. So I just put the link into the chat there. So click on that. If you use Facebook, please consider joining us over there. Ben's been posting cool pictures and videos from the course. We'll be posting kind of like additional learning over there as well. So that's logistical piece number one. Logistical piece number two. So our next meeting, our in-person, sorry, let me just double check my calendar to make sure I give you the right dates, is going to be the weekend of April 26th, 27th. And Ben, I kind of forget the names of the buildings. So do you want to just unmute yourself and let people know which buildings we're at? And then I'll pull up that Google map for folks to look at.
Sure. We are in two buildings this at the end of the month. The Kuchiching building, which is kind of like the main conference wedding venue area. If you've been there before, it's the same spot. There's no change. And then the alumni building. If you are familiar with where Recreation holds their summer camp, it's that green building at the lower field. Basically all you need to know is from the Kuchiching building, the main building, just go down the hill and you really can't miss it. One thing that I kept getting again and again, three people saying that the location, the 7098 Rama Road, was taking them to the post office in Longford. So if that happens to you, just keep going north, follow the green signs, and you'll see a big sign that says Gawaden K. And Chris, on his shared screen, you can see the driveway there. Yeah. So if you're having trouble finding it, you can also just message me. You can send me an email. You can send me a text to my work phone. I can put that in the chat as well, what my work number is, if you don't have it already.
So we're meeting at the Cooch building on Saturday, Ben, and then Sunday it's at the other building?
Alumni, yeah.
Yeah, and which one's the alumni here if I was to draw it on the map? Are they still parking at the Kuchiching parking lot?
Yes. I mean, they can come down. Yeah,
Okay.
yeah, they can come down. We can just park on the road. Can you zoom in?
Yep. Hold on, I need to how do I zoom in right now? I gotta stop the annotate thing, I think, to zoom in.
Well, you got the plus and the minus in the left bottom corner. Oh, there you go.
Yeah, here we go. So I can ignore the little red squiggly on there. So there's I'll go back to the annotate again here for a second. And let me go clear. Here we go. So this is the Kuchiching building that we usually meet at, right? And there's the parking lot. So where are we gonna go on?
So the road that's closest to the lake, you're gonna just follow that down, and really you can't miss it. Yeah, you're gonna keep going down to about there. Yeah, about there.
Okay.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
And that's on the Sunday.
That's on the Sunday. Yeah.
Great. Yeah. And then everyone's got the entrance there now. So thanks everybody. And then we're meeting at 9:30 both days start time. So 9:30 to 4:30 approximately is our timeline for that.
Yeah.
Yeah, any logistical questions from anyone before we kind of officially kick things off tonight? Going once, going twice. You can unmute yourself or you can just throw it in the chat. We're good. All right. I'm gonna pass it over to you, brother Caleb. Go for it, man.
Morning, everybody. Good evening. It was really cool down here when we were talking about the full moon. We had this massive, massive black cloud over the South Shore of Rice Lake, and when the moon was coming up, it was stuck behind this like coal black wall. But you could see all the moonlight going up and hitting all the clouds above us. It was like the most surreal lighting I've ever seen. Like, it was as pretty as the Northern Lights to me. It was absolutely stunning. But yeah, moving on to what we're going to be talking about tonight, we are going to be talking about Nimebine Giizis, which is the sucker moon. And unlike all the other slideshow presentation I've done, I kept this fairly succinct. There's only like 7 slides in total, including this title card. So I'm going to be talking more than showing you a lot of different stuff. But in general, the sucker moon is a time of shift. So we're going from, like, I still have some snow in my neighborhood, but I also have green grass all in front of me, and I've been watching the balsam poplar buds start to burst open. They're at their full maximum at this point. We're having all the ice cleared off of Rice Lake, but there's still a little bit of ice built up on top of my water buckets, and I'm still getting ice in my sap buckets. We're actually ending our sap run right now where I am because the trees are starting to bud. The silver maples and the red maples are starting to open up their blossoms. They put their flowers out before they put their leaves out. And that's something I found really fascinating with different species. You'll have what sometimes is referred to as son before the father. And that means like the leaves come out before, the flowers come out before the leaves do. Coltsfoot does this. The maples do this. Some other tree species do that because they find it more advantageous to have their flowers out early and spread that pollen through the air when there's less stuff in the way, like their leaves. So it's a really cool time of year because everything's shifting. Everything's going through max shift. For example, the sucker, the walleye, the smelt, and other species of fish are beginning to spawn up the creeks, the streams, and the rivers. As soon as the ice goes out, is a great time to go after muskie as well, because that's when the muskie and the pike begin spawning in the weedy shallows of the lakes. If I want to get a muskie or pike right now, my best place to go is pretty much right off Serpent Mounds here in Rice Lake. Go over into those shallows all the way around the mounds, and they're just spawning in there right now. As the warm rain comes, we're going to start seeing, well, already I'm hearing frogs over the last week and a half, 2 weeks, I'm hearing spring peepers. And about 2 nights ago, I started to hear my first wood frog, which is a completely like these are the tree frogs of Ontario. You have the Gray's tree frog, you have the wood frog, and you have the spring peeper, and several other species. These are actual like tree frogs. We think of tree frogs as a tropical or subtropical thing, but they're a being in our neck of the woods as well, which I find really kind of cool. Because growing up, you think of frogs and you think of swamps or bogs or like a pond or where there's cranberries if you're into memes. It's just these little frogs climb up into the trees or up on top of the tallest plants they can in the wetlands, and they just start singing, calling out their breeding songs. The salamanders will start crossing roads looking for those wetlands. They often hibernate in the duff of the forest floor, down in the muck. I have a story of that last year at my sugar bush. I had a friend, a very dear friend, Rashawn, who decided to stay out one night on his own and watch the sap boil for us. And he has never done an overnight alone in the woods at night. That was kind of redundant to say, but he's never been out in the woods alone at night for an entire night before. And I came to check on him around 7:38 in the morning the next day, and he was feral-eyed. He was like wild-eyed. And I was like, "What's going on? You okay? What happened?" And he's like, "Well, I was sitting here watching the fire, and the rain came around 1 in the morning, and it was just this downpour for like an hour and a half straight. And luckily, I had this tarp over on top of me, or else I would have been drenched. But as the rain subsided, I started seeing the ground moving, and this creature climbed out of the ground, and it just kept crawling out like this long snake with arms. And then it started to walk around me, and finally I was able to get the headlamp to turn on, and it was this giant salamander with yellow stripes and spots all over it. Like, that's what happens. They're down in the ground, just chilling out, staying in their hibernation period. And as soon as that warm water comes down and wakes them up from the rainfall, they climb up out of the muck and ooze, and they go down to the wetlands to start laying their eggs and spawning in their own right. birds of prey are beginning to select and construct their nests. Some of you may be aware that a couple of days ago, an osprey over in the Innisfil area decided to try and build a nest by dropping sticks down on a power line, one of the major power lines to Innisfil, and knock out power for over 2 hours, 3 hours in total, because they're looking for those. We've trained osprey to nest on top of power line towers, power line poles. And now that there's so many osprey back, they've rebounded. They're one of the best success stories we have in Ontario about wildlife rehabilitation. There's less and less places for them to nest because they're so accustomed to nesting on those little platforms we built them, that now that they're going out into the wild to nest, they're having to figure it out again. So this one poor osprey was dropping sticks onto a power line, trying to build in the nest that they were raised in when they were babies, and ended up dropping sticks onto a power line and wrecking it. Other birds, of course, are doing the same thing. If you go out into the wetlands right now, you may notice that a lot of the cattail heads that were nice and solid all winter have fluffed out. And everyone's like, oh, they're opening up to spread their seed. Yes, but they didn't do it. Chickadees, red-winged blackbirds, tons of different little birds come in and rip all that downy fluff out of those seed heads of the cattails and spread it around as they build their nests using that insulative material for their nesting. Finally, spring ephemerals like wild leeks, trout lily, and trilliums are beginning to emerge. I'm just starting to see the tops of the wild ramps in my neck of the woods. As I said earlier, the grass is green across the road from me. I'm starting to notice that the sunchokes are starting to bud, so they're getting ready to get opened up and come through the dirt and start to grow again. This is the time of transition. This is a massive shift in the time of year. This is when things move and start to jive and do their thing and getting ready to open up for the springtime. And that's one of my good friend's nephews out on his very first sucker spearing in that photo. That was his very first sucker he ever caught right there. That was a white lake sucker. Fishing during the spawn, there's a lot of methods. There's a lot of techniques you can do. The five that I listed there are the ones that I know best for this time of year. There are other methods, don't get me wrong. There's a lot of methods, including bow fishing, hand catching, poisoning, a lot of different methods to catch fish. But these are the five methods that are the most effective that I've used or have studied this time of year for this season. When we're talking about fish on the spawn. So talking about smelt coming up, walleye currently, sucker very soon, different kinds of sucker, red horse sucker, white sucker, the whitefish, all these different species that like to move up the creeks and into the tributaries to lay their eggs and fertilize those eggs. The first is obviously angling. That's what most of us are already accustomed to with fishing. Just taking a line and a rod and throwing that line out with a hook on it and hoping to catch those fish. In some situations, that works great. Some species actually aren't hungry when they're spawning. They are not interested in eating anything whatsoever. And so depending on the species you're after, it may not be conducive to use a line and a hook, because you may be able to catch one as they're going by and just happen to kind of gaff one and just grab it. In fact, many of the walleye I see dudes landing this time of year when they throw their hooks out, some are eating them. Often the younger ones that are coming, what we often refer to as the jacks, but often more than not, I'm seeing it catch on the gill, catch on the belly even, because the hook is just in the water with thousands of fish moving upstream. So eventually something's going to get hooked. Nets. There's several kinds of nets that you can use. You can use dip nets if you're going after smelt and even sucker. There are some areas where you can use dip nets to catch sucker in Ontario. And of course, if you have a good amount of sucker in the creeks you're running and you're Indigenous yourself with your treaty enforced rights, you can try dip netting for a sucker. I prefer spearing them. That's my preference, but that's just me. Spears. That's dip nets. And then you also have line nets, which are actual, like the classic fishing nets that people expect to see out on the water. Long ribbons of nets hung in the water with certain size mesh to allow smaller species through, but not the bigger ones. And maybe the biggest ones that you don't want getting in the nets can get around the net because they can feel the obstruction. That's not usually the case. If you throw out a walleye net this time of year that's got the mesh for catching walleye and a big lake sturgeon comes through for some reason, they are going to get caught in that net and they will trash that net. If somehow a steelhead, like the ones in these photos here, gets caught up in those nets, they will get caught up in those nets and they are prone to trashing those nets. So being mindful of what species are coming through there. You don't want to just use any old net. And we're going to talk a little bit more about nets in a moment. Spears are one of my preferences for catching fish this time of year. There's a lot of reasons. First and foremost, it's more selective than a line or a net, in my opinion. I can see the fish that I'm going to hit. And when you're looking at a fish, this is going to be really confusing, but Ben, would you mind standing up so people that can see you for a moment? Just stand up. So if you're out spearfishing for walleye and you see Ben minus that cat, you would be like, that's a good looking fish, nice and trim, nice and slim. That is a jack. That is a male fish that may not even be a sexually mature one. The young ones actually will spawn with the adults, often just to end up eating the eggs. Many of those really small fish that you see in the species that are going upriver, they're not there to spawn. They're there to eat the eggs. Whereas you see this body shape, that's a female full of eggs. Okay. So when I'm out spearfishing, I can target which one I want to hit.
I
And
was
it's
wondering
not,
if that was an intentional dig at Ben when you said may not be a sexually mature one yet.
well, it's not if they're small, but if they're slim and trim, that's usually a male. If you see one that's got a bit of a roundness to their belly, that's a female. And those females are the most important part of the equation when it comes down to spawning. We don't want to devastate the spawning. We don't want to devastate the population when we go out. Do we catch a lot of fish when we go out? You're damn right we do. We can take upwards. I've been out with people who've taken 250 walleye in a single night, and they did it all with spears. And when they did it, they took one female out of those 200, 250, and it was just a fluke. She swam in when they were trying to hit a male, and they connected, which is an incidental catch, just like any other incidental catch. It's not what you intended to do, but it happens. We have techniques to make good on that and rectify that situation by knowing how to milk the eggs and milk the milt or the sperm out of the males, mix it together and put it back in the water where it's supposed to be. So we have solutions for that, but we intend to aim at the males. And we try to look for the smaller of the males so that we're helping the genetic balance out there. Spears allow that, nets don't. Nets don't allow me to choose. I can, milk them if I catch them in the net, but with a spear, I can solve my problem for the most part, about a 90 to 99% uh, success rate and a 1 to 8% failure rate of hitting females by accident. Those are your incidental catches. I find it's more prone with walleye. If I go after a sucker, it's almost guaranteed I'm going to come back with just males because they don't move as much and you're not in as deep a water, so there's less variables in the way when I'm spearing. Weirs are another method that we use. Historically, a weir is the fish fence, the magicianing fish fence that we all talk about up in Rama Way between Lake Couchiching and Lake Simcoe is a weir. What a weir is you're actually, it's not like people think it's a fish trap, and it is in a sense, but it's actually using psychology against them. Fish like to go along edges, right? So like if you're looking at my screen right now, you see this screen around me, the frame around my screen. If my finger was a walleye, it wouldn't want to swim out here. It wants to go along that edge, and then it hits that corner and it goes up along that corner, and then boom along this corner, and then boom along this corner, and it will just continue to swim around in that circle. The goal there is if we make two lines of sticks or poles going into that square, into that frame, and they just slightly intersect each other, fish will go up this and then start to swim around, right? They'll follow that edge. When they get back to this edge, they just continue past it and continue to cycle around. They're not actually truly trapped. They just can't perceive going into that narrow passageway. It's not necessarily like a funnel trap. Though it is a funnel trap, it doesn't act the same as a funnel trap. We're just simply letting the fish follow their natural psychology and stay inside of the weir. And finally, basket traps. Basket traps are a trap. That's where you're weaving a basket, and then that basket has a funnel in it. It may have a funnel on one end and another on the other, or it may just be one end that's open and one end that's tied shut or woven shut. And that allows the fish to come in. That's really useful on creeks and smaller fish. Those basket traps that are used for bigger fish, they are very large and take a lot of engineering. Now, our relatives way far north, they have even more complex traps. They have one that's called a fish wheel, which is insane. Like people will say that indigenous people didn't invent the wheel. Yes, we did. We just didn't use it for travel. We used it for catching fish. It's like a giant water wheel with baskets all along it. So it looks almost like a what's that ride? Not a carousel, a Ferris wheel. It's like a big Ferris wheel in the river that's got a big water wheel attached, moving the wheel. And as those salmon or char are moving up the river, they're getting caught in these baskets and tossed on land. Like it's an actual engineering feat, in my opinion, to see such complex things. We didn't have those down here. We had basket traps that you would put into small creeks or small rivers to catch things like smelt, catch things like sucker in some instances, as well as in some bays and lakes and swamps, they were used for catching catfish and as well as crawfish and a lot of other species. So those are the 5 main ways that I'm aware of that we used in this region for this time of year. My favorite is the spear because I can be more precise with it and I can be more selective with my harvest. That's it. That's the only reason I really like it. Also, it's kind of caveman-esque. I'm gonna be honest. Like it feels really wild and empowering to drive a spear into the water and pull a fish out of the water when you do it. Landing a muskie on a rod and reel, not arguing that, not saying that it doesn't feel great, but to me, there's something very primal and very inherently human to push that spear into the water and bring food home with it. It's a very rewarding sensation over the other methods. Now, the weirs that we were talking about earlier would be used with spears and dip nets and other trapping methods or catching methods because it's just a giant fish fence, right? You're not just the fish don't just pile up in there and then they jump into your arms. You got to retrieve them out of the fish fence in some way or another. Often it was done with spears or landing nets or other techniques. I saw some
Caleb,
questions. Yep.
um, I will never do this in my life. I'll never eat a muskie, but I was wondering, how does it taste?
I don't mind muskie. I see. I'm going to get myself in trouble if anybody is from the Kawartha Lakes region when they hear me say this. I don't like walleye. I didn't grow up on it. I grew up on Lake Huron. I grew up eating salmon and sturgeon and whitefish and pike. Like I like the clean taste of pike. I think it's one of my favorite fish to smoke. It's one of my favorite fish to fry. Um, when it comes down to muskie, I find them because they're such large fish and they're such older fish that they get that strong flavor that everybody complains with, that muddy taste.
Right, right.
But I have had a young muskie that tasted just like a pike. So
Okay.
depending on the size of them, depending on their age, I think you can get away with saying that they can taste just like pike. I've also had a really big pike when I was up in Missinaibi Cree about 2 summers ago. This dude landed a 27-inch pike. And they're like, yeah, that's pretty common up here. I'm like, that's common? That's like a muskie where I'm from. Muskies get bigger than that, but it's rare that you see a pike that big in my neck of the woods.
Sure.
And when we ate that pike, it tasted like a muskie. It tasted very muddy. It tasted very dirty, very strong flavored. Who
Okay,
makes
so I'm not
the
I'm not sold on eating it. So thanks for confirming my suspicion.
Yeah, I like
Yeah,
I would rather eat a pike over a muskie, but then again, I'm also the guy that's like I'm not like I don't hate walleye, but it's not my preferred fish. Like if I had
you're
it served to me,
crazy.
if someone serves me walleye, I'm gonna eat it. But I'm like my main thing that I like to catch in this lake is catfish. Like I love catfish. So that's just me. I can't tell you what's the best tasting fish out here because everybody disagrees with me when I say it's what I like. Who makes the fish wheel? I believe the Yupik up in Alaska, as well as several nations in the Yukon into the Alaskan border. I'm trying to remember the names. It's not the Chipuyan. I believe the Gwich'in, the northern Gwich'in do it. The closer they are to the rivers, there's quite a few nations that build them, mostly in the Alaskan Yukon region. All the names I can't honestly remember. I do know that the Yupik did some. What size catfish is best for eating? Fish that across the board, smaller the fish, the better they taste. That like across the board, if you get yourself a big like flathead down in Indiana, they're a great photo fish. They're a great fish to mount on a wall. They're not what I like to eat. I like to get like bullheads and channel cats that are no bigger than my elbow to my wrist. If they get a little bit bigger, like out to my knuckles or my fingertips, that's okay too. But the bigger the catfish gets, the stronger the tastes are. And you got to remember that a catfish is not a herbivore. They are a carnivore that often is eating putrefying things at the bottom of the lake. They're scavengers. And so the older that fish is and the bigger that fish is, the stronger those kinds of flavors start to come through. Um, but I like my bullheads, my channel cats about elbow to fingertip max, elbow to wrist ideal. All right. I'm going to close the chat real quick so we can jump on to the next photos or the next slide. Come on. There we go. Some of the plants that we use for making nets. So we have stinging nettle, which is basanoshk. Then we have hemp dogbane, which is gizine or gizine. Yeah, gizine is the way that I would pronounce that. Hemp dogbane is sometimes, if you look in older books, is referred to as Indian hemp. It's a member of the dogbane family, which is a member of the milkweed family. Milkweed also has really good fibers inside of it for making string, but dogbane is one of the strongest. We have 2 species of dogbane that I'm aware of in Ontario. There may be others, pardon me, that I'm not accustomed to or not aware of, but the 2 that I know are spreading dogbane and hemp dogbane. Spreading dogbane works as well. All dogbanes can be used for fishing line or for fishing nets. The reason I go for hemp dogbane and our ancestors went for hemp dogbane is because it's taller. So you can get a lot more fiber per plant. Whereas spreading dogbane, I've rarely ever seen it taller than maybe 2.5 feet. I've seen hemp dogbane consistently 6 feet tall. So I can easily get long fibers to twist cord out of. And then basswood, Wigopa tig. Wigopa tig is one of my favorites. It's not ideal for nets because it's, well, a whole other thing that we got time. Wigopa tig, the fiber of the Wigopa tig is processed. Like you can see that top photo, that is processed fiber from the basswood tree. And the bark doesn't look like that. What happens, you peel the bark off in the summertime, throw it into a swamp or throw it into a slow-moving creek and leave it there for the entire summer. And what happens is bacteria in the water begins to eat away at the sap glues, the carbohydrates, all those other compounds to red it and break it down to finer and finer fiber, right? So the water's bacteria is doing that. So if I make a net out of it and I leave that net out for several days, that redding process might actually kickstart and continue going again, right? So if you leave your net out and you don't maintain it on a regular basis, it can actually start to rot and actually fall apart, become weaker and weaker the longer it's in the water. Dogbane has this natural wax in its fibers that makes it very water resistant. And so it's not as prone to rotting. Same with stinging nettle. So stinging nettle and dogbane are my preferences for making nets and fishing lines and all those other things. Basswood has a lot of uses, and we're going to be getting into a lot of those uses as the year goes, folks. But I just want to point out, because it is historically documented for making nets. I just don't like to do it myself because it's going to take a beating out there in the water, and that basswood took a lot of work to get to. Like, you got to think, you can't just take the bark and make a net. You've got to actually twine that out. You got to turn that all into cord, and that can take days. A single net made by an Ojibwe woman in Minnesota was documented of being made of 10,000 stalks of dogbane. 10,000 stalks. So you have to gather all of those when they're dry in the fall, process them by beating them and crushing them and getting the fiber out of them, process the fiber so that it's nice and soft and clean, and then spin all of that fiber into string before you start weaving your net. So it's a lot of work, right? It's a lot of work to process them. It could take an entire winter to make one net, and each family would have upwards of 3 nets. Chris, you got your hand up?
Yeah, I had a quick question for you.
Sure.
And then I think Sky's got a question in the chat there as well.
Oh, wonderful.
But I just got a quick one about the language one there. So I've heard you refer to basswood, I thought, is wigope, but are you saying the wigope is just when you're referring to the rope? And then
That's just the wigope. Like, you can say wigope, or you can say wigopa. Wigopa tig is like the formal name. It's
Right.
like Matthew, right? You got
Okay.
wigope. Wigope is acceptable. It's talking about the fiber and the bark, but
Yeah.
we all know what it's talking about when we say, like, if I point at that tree and say wigope, everybody that understands the language knows what I'm saying there.
And then when you put the atig, it adds tree. So it's like the
Yeah, it's
rope.
talking about the tree itself. Yeah.
And I'm curious, hemp dogbane, Giizin. It
Giizis,
almost, I'm thinking about the word Giizis, moon. Is there any
right?
relation there? Like,
Well,
or
so Giizis talks about a moon or a sun, and it's the same as like when we're talking about Giizhik on duck. That Giizhik is talking about how it strives for the sky towards Giizhik,
right.
which is the sky. So Giizis, Giizin, Giizis, they have similar root words. I don't honestly know. I've been trying to figure this one out for a while now. I have my teachers in the language that I could actually just call on, but I've been trying to just figure this one for about a month and a half now because I only learned this word 2 months ago. I've been trying to figure out what it breaks down to because it's always like syllable based, right? So
Mhm.
Giz could possibly be talking about that same thing as Giizis, Giizun, Giizhik, all those. It could be. I don't know. That's my simple answer. I don't know.
Cool. I was just thinking
And
it's
then
interesting because dogbane definitely like likes those really hot, sunny
out in the
environments
sun,
as
out in
well.
the sun. It likes to be near water if possible, but it loves to be in the sun when it's near that water. The two places I gather my dogbane is out on the wetland near my camp. There's this stand of it that every year I spread the seed and it gets wider and wider. And I think we now have a 300-meter long section of dogbane out there, like plants. And then up behind my house in the highest hill on the entire res, there's like I would say just shy of 1.5 acres of dogbane up there. So I go every fall with a sickle and just gather all that dogbane and then take the seed heads and crush them and throw them all over the place and then bring all the stalks home to make cord with all winter.
And crew, we
Uh,
are going to be doing a bunch of this like in our in-person days. So
yeah,
yeah, we'll definitely be like making some basswood rope. We'll probably work with some dogbane and some of these fibers later in the fall.
heck yeah.
So definitely if you can show up to the in-persons, we'll do some of this stuff.
Oh
Hands
yeah,
on.
it's one of my favorite. I think Chris and I are on the same mind that I think making cord is my favorite way to meditate. Like I'll sit back and I'll just binge watch a series of TV. Like when I was making my dogbane fiber strings this past winter, I was watching the new season of Squid Games the whole time because after you learn how to work cord and make cord, you don't actually have to look at it. It becomes like knitting, where you can just look at the screen, let my brain go to mush while I make string. And at the end of binge watching an 8-part series of some sort of true crime show, my partner comes home. Did you do anything today or did you sit there watching? No, I made 1,000 feet of string. See, I need that for all my work. I'm actually working right now. So I have like an easy way to like meditate while also still feeling like I'm being productive when I'm doing things. It's my fidget spinner, right? Sucker Moon foraging. There's a lot of things coming up this month, right? There's a lot of things coming up. Like I said, the leeks and where I am right now are about that high out of the ground so far. I'm going to leave them until about another 2, maybe even 3 weeks. I might leave them until May to let them get fully developed into full leaf size. But they are what everybody knows about. I want to talk about a little bit of sustainability before I go too far into this, but I'm just going to talk about the rest of the plants that are in these photos. There is a lot of plants out there right now, right? And they're not all native. We have behind my house right now, I have a huge, huge patch of garlic mustard coming up. Garlic mustard is an invasive species. It is a problematic species that can cause a lot of issues for our native wildlife and native plants, and it's edible. So there's like this kind of phrase in the foraging community of eat your invasives. It seems almost dismissive of the actual problem. Like, go ahead, eat buckthorn, try it. It doesn't work out too well. But there are certain plants for sure that we can rectify the situation to an extent, at least in small scale, by consuming them. Garlic mustard being one of them. Garlic mustard is the oldest known seasoning. They actually found it on the tooth enamel of Neanderthals 35,000 years ago. And the running theory is they were taking the whole plant, toasting the leaves over the fire until they were dry, crushing them up and rubbing them into the meat that they then roasted over the fire, which I think is like incredible. Like it's such a simple seasoning, but it's also such a good seasoning. I use garlic mustard all through this time of year to make all kinds of dishes. It's one of my favorite things to eat because it's one of the first to come up. It's literally the first plant I see really greening and looking vibrant right after the snow melts. And it was brought here unintentionally. It was not supposed to be here. And so I'm trying to rectify the situation by removing it from where it is. Beyond that, the native spring foods that we are starting to see this time of year are leeks, fiddleheads, and things like sunchoke. These are 3 different photos. The one in the right hand bottom here is my patch of sunchokes in my yard. And I started with 4 sunchoke plants from 4 different places because I wanted genetic diversity. Threw them in there, left them alone for a whole year. And by the next year, this is what it looked like. And this patch is going on 14 years old now, I believe, 13 or 14. This is the 13th or 14th year. I have a patch that is 3 feet wide by 8 feet long. And I don't do anything to amend the soil. I don't do anything to irrigate it. I don't do anything to take care of these plants. Every once in a while, I'll chop down all the stalks in the fall, crush them up and put them on top as a mulch. But that's really the only nutrients they get from me. That's the only help they get from me at all. And I'm pulling out about 20 pounds per square foot from my garden of these roots. And you can see how big these roots can get. Like this is just one sunchoke root in this middle photo here. Right here is 30 pounds that I pulled out of the area that they're sitting on top of, which is no wider than a shovel blade. They are one of the most consistent food sources and one of the most dependable food sources you can get. They're high in carbohydrates. One of their main carbohydrates is a compound called inulin. Inulin is not insulin. A lot of people get confused because they think insulin and inulin are just the same thing. It's a synonymous word. They are not. Inulin is a prebiotic food for your probiotic bacteria. The inulin is a starch that doesn't break down in your stomach. It breaks down in your lower intestine where your gut flora consumes the inulin and helps metabolize it and digest it and put it into your body. And that inulin helps you quite a bit in a lot of different ways. Because it's a heavy compound starch, it doesn't increase your blood sugar levels very much. So it does help diabetics. Don't get me wrong. It's just not a natural source of insulin. I just want to make that clear. Inulin, though, has another problem. It's a benefit. There's always a pro and a con to everything. The con is that inulin is feeding your microbes, and those microbes in your gut produce carbon dioxide. And that carbon dioxide has to go somewhere. And that easiest path is, since it's at the lower intestine, I think you can guess where the easiest path of escape is, which leads to the nickname. The oldest name that I heard of for this stuff outside of our name, which is a skib one. A skib one is our name for sunchoke. But the next name I heard for it was the very first name I ever heard it for it when I was younger was Jerusalem artichoke. That artichoke name is because it has somewhat of a texture like artichoke, but that leads to the nickname for it amongst a lot of people that are not fans of it, which is fartichoke. So you need to get your body used to this food before you eat a big bowl of it. My favorite way to cook it is I will take it and the wild leeks together and cook them overnight, low temperature roasting for many, many, many hours. And then I'll peel them, crush them, chop them up and put them into a pot of water and boil them until they become very, very, very soft. And then I'll add a little bit of cream and I'll start to blend them into a sunchoke and leek soup that beats almost any other soup I've ever had in my life. There's a European soup root vegetable award because we have that much free time in the world, I guess. There is a root vegetable for soups award or soup vegetable award in Europe. And for 7 years straight, the sunchoke plant has won that award because it's considered the best root vegetable for making soups with. I don't know why there's an award for that, but like I said, we all got our hobbies. Very, very dependable food source. Like I said, it actually is more productive than potato. It's more productive than manioc root. It's more productive than corn because again, 25 to 30 pounds per square foot you can pull out of the ground from a patch that needs little to no maintenance. It's very drought resistant, drought tolerant. It's very nutrient deficient, tolerant. It doesn't need fertilizers. It doesn't need a lot of attention at all. And it's one of our oldest foods. We know that this was a crop that was spread all over North America by the Eastern agricultural complex of the mound builder cultures from 3,500 to 5,000 years ago. The reason we know that is we don't know what its native range is because as soon as indigenous people realized that you could eat this, we spread it everywhere. The patch that I got my original roots from, one of them was a patch that's been there since before my reserve was founded. These are a long-term food source. So a great thing to have, you just have to know where they are and dig up the roots in the springtime and make food. Top left photo is fiddleheads, which are ostrich fern fiddleheads specifically. There's a lot of different kinds of ferns out there, and not all of them are edible. Many of them are toxic or carcinogenic, so you have to know what they are. That all out of the way, the sustainability thing. You can pick leeks. But if that patch is not, if you open your hands and do this kind of motion, and you put your hand over that patch of leeks and you count less than 5 plants between your two hands, you shouldn't be picking there. That's the simplest way I can put it. If you put your hand over a patch of wild leeks and you can't see dirt between the leaves, you can pick from that down to about 5 or 6 plants, and that will be just fine. It will be sustainable. You do not want to pick them by the bucket load in one spot, though. Spread the seeds, do everything you can to take care of them. This patch was heavily disturbed 15, 16 years ago, 17 years ago now, and we have now recovered that patch enough that we can start picking from it again, which is why those photos are there. It took me
Caleb,
15 years to do that. Yes, sir.
when you say picking, this actually might be a Chris question, well, both of you, but when you say picking, just the leaves, or do you mean also going down and grabbing the bulbs?
So that's where it gets into the conversations. A lot of research has been done in the last 20 years. The original comments that were made of that we shouldn't pick the bulbs comes from one article, one journal from 1993, where they studied a 1 meter by 1 meter square over 3 years and concluded that no new plants grew. Therefore, if you pick any, the patch could die. That's not how biodiversity works. That's not how nature works. If again, there was 140 to 160 million of us in North America at contact. Has everybody here tasted a wild leek before? If you have tasted a wild leek, you can confirm this for me. Do you think if it was easily wiped out, wouldn't 140 million of us do that by now? Wouldn't they have been wiped out already? Because we understood sustainable practices, we were able to harvest from them on a regular basis and in a sustainable way. You can dig the bulbs up, but you don't want to take all of them. So I try to follow this philosophy of you spread out your hands as wide as they can, and if I see less than 5, I leave it alone. If I see way more than 5, I can pick some, including the bulbs. If I want to get some from a patch that isn't fully established or it's not doing great or I'm concerned about taking too many, I will take a single leaf off of each plant, and that's more than enough for me. I love the leaves. The bulbs are more spicy, I get it, but I like the leaves just fine. I like to use the leaves to infuse. I like to dry the leaves, lacto ferment the leaves, mix them with salt, and make different kinds of things with them. I don't need the bulbs for a lot of things. I've had ladies, old ladies from different communities be like, but I need the bulb for the recipe. Then pick the bulbs, but make sure you're doing it in a sustainable way. That's the main thing I'll say about it. There's a great documentary about this very thing from Samuel Thayer, who is a incredible forager. I will say right now that the documentary he made about wild leeks, which I can send to you to send to the group if you want, is really well researched, and he did a lot of good deep study on it. He missed the opportunity he should have taken to talk about Indigenous people because he started the video with a bunch of Anishinaabe women picking leeks and then never went back to the context of why. Because we've been picking them since time immemorial and we know how to pick them in a sustainable way. And he talked about how like you could actually have multiple harvests in a sugar bush because leeks grow in the sugar bush. It's almost as if they were put there for a reason. They were by us. We put them there. So that's my comment on the whole thing. I'm sure Chris has his own because him and Laura do some amazing work with sustainable picking of leeks in their own ways for their work. But that's the main thing that I would want to get across. Oh, perfect. Thank you, Chris.
Yeah, I just put the link in there to Sam's video there. And the only thing I'll just kind of add to that. So yeah, we actually like commercially harvest wild leeks for our business, and sustainability is an absolutely concern. There are parts of the range where leeks have almost gone extinct in recent years from people over
Quebec.
harvesting. And these are areas where they are very pressured, and too many people are picking from the same areas and don't really understand the ecology that Caleb's talking about and how to do it. So if we're
Exactly.
picking from areas where we believe other people might be picking as well that don't know how to harvest in a sustainable way, then we do leaf only picking from those areas. But our wild patches where we know we're the only one picking from, we have no problem harvesting bulbs because we understand how much we can take in a way that actually increases the size of the leeks and the population. And we've been doing this for over a decade. Up here with our business, and a lot of, or I should say all of the patches that we're picking, the private patches, are actually have more leeks now than they did a decade ago. So even though we're harvesting every year, the leeks are expanding in those patches. But anywhere where it's pressured, I do leaf only. And it's good to know like the leaves are delicious and you can do almost everything with the leaf. Like you can do wild leek soup with just the
Mm-hmm.
leaf. You can dry them and make spices. we'd infuse them into vinegars. So if you're in an area where you're worried about them being over harvested and pressured, by all means, just do leaf only. Um, but watch this video. It really is. I liked what Caleb brought out about wishing he had done better due respect to where some of this knowledge came from. But he does do a bunch of his own scientific studies in here and really can like demonstrate what Caleb's talking about how humans can actually improve leek density in a forest through sustainable harvesting.
And it's what we've done since time immemorial. Our people were managing those forests. They found DNA research from observing the patches and the plots that sometimes the genetic diversity in those patches is impossible without human intervention because people were bringing seeds or whole plants and planting them elsewhere and spreading the genetics all over the place. So it's a really fascinating subject, is getting into like the biodiversity of Indigenous inclusion on the landscape. It's a huge part to it. And this is the Land Stewardship Guild. So this is why I want to kind of talk about some of the sustainability aspects. So thank you for asking those questions, Ben. That really helped broaden this even further. The final real part is wigwas, or birch bark. In this photo, you can see a bunch of uses for birch bark. We have a folded spoon, a biscuit tanagan, which is a sap bucket. Down here, it's a knife sheath. This one is actually a match case that's just rolled up and cut and stitched together in a certain way. This is the interior of a dome wigwam, looking out, completely made of birch bark. And this one here is a half birch bark, half cedar bark conical wigwam built up at Curve Lake First Nation I did a couple of years back. These are all some of the many uses of birch bark. In the upcoming in-person class, we will be making some birch bark baskets. To understand that, we have to know how the material works. Birch bark and basswood bark are some of the only trees that you can peel in the wintertime if you know how to do it. And we're going to go over that a little bit in person. I'm just going to give you the secret right now. You need to expose the bark to heat. In the old days, we would chop the tree down and pour boiling hot water on the outside of the bark, or you would mound it with snow and then put two long fires along the parallel to the trunk of the tree until the snow melted, and then you could peel the bark that way. Nowadays, I use heat guns because I can go up to the tree while it's still standing, heat the bark on the living tree, peel the bark off the living tree, and leave it standing. That's a lot less messy than me having to drop the tree and peel the bark off of a downed tree, and especially in the cold. But secondly, when you peel the bark off a tree, we've heard a lot in the past from people saying that when you peel the bark off a birch tree, you will kill it. That is not the case. If you peel the inner bark off of a birch tree, yes, you will kill it. If you peel all the bark off that tree down to the wood, you will definitely kill that tree. If you're peeling the outer bark off only, you are scarring the tree. You are harming the tree. Don't get me wrong. You are causing disfigurement to that tree, but you are not killing that tree. And from a long-term Anishinaabe worldview, the fact that that tree gets to survive and still produce seeds and spread its genetics throughout the ecology is way more important than whether it looks pretty or not, or pristine or not. So when we peel birch bark off of trees, a lot of people who are from a Western lens think it's very disgraceful, that it's very damaging, that's even deadly or harmful to the tree. The birch trees have been around. The family of birch, Betulina, has been around, or Betula, has been around for 49 million years. To put that into perspective, dinosaurs went extinct 65 million years ago. There's just over 15 million years between dinosaurs and birch trees. Just keep that in your head for a second when I start talking about the tectonic plates shifting, massive upheaval from, ice storms that raged for years, the ice age itself, desertification, the change of the entire continental drift through tectonic plate activity, all of the massive upheaval of the last 65 million years, 49 million years, birch have survived it. Cutting their bark off is not going to wipe them out. Cutting their bark off is not going to kill them. Their bark has always been very thin. And they've evolved to survive that. And part of what they do to survive that is their inner bark has a compound in it called melanin. the same melanin that is in our skin. And the darker the melanin is, the more sun resistant that body is, right? So birch bark, it's phloem layer. The phloem layer is the outermost portion of the inner bark of the cambium. Produces melanin. If it produces melanin, that's because it's adapted itself to be having the outer bark missing, right? That's the first thing. It doesn't make an adaptation without having to adapt to that adaptation, right? Or a need for that adaptation. The second part is that melanin is also fungal resistant, right? The fungal resistance and the solar radiation resistance protects the tree from fungal infection, which is the leading cause of death to trees outside of people cutting them down and ice storms like what we had 2 weeks ago, but also solar radiation to the inner bark. So these two things, the tree's already evolved to handle. And we can actually use that to our advantage. When we peel winter bark, a portion of the phloem, that outermost inner bark, peels off with the outer bark. So when we peel it, you can then end up scraping off some of that phloem and creating what we call winter bark. All these designs you see, so here's where it first started. You can see that image right here. And I started to scrape away the phloem, so that reddish color on the edges, that dark brown color on the edges, that's the phloem. And that dark brown is the melanin inside of the phloem, inside of the inner bark. And so as I wet it and scrape it away with a sharp tool like a knife or an awl or even a scalpel blade or a razor blade, I can start to make these designs. Here's where it started, and this is what it became. Here's what this is the front of this is the bow of a canoe with a crane on it. This is my son's one gauntlet that he wears for his regalia, for his Anishinaabe, Nehiyawak, what we call crossover regalia. So I added a bunch of Ojibwe flair to his Cree style, Plains Cree style regalia that my mother and his mother made together for him. I added a bunch of Anishinaabe flair by making these birch bark cuffs that he could wear that were made with etched birch bark. This is a sunburst on a canoe. This is thunderbirds on a canoe. This is the thunderbird woman on a medallion. This is winter bark. This is the beauty of winter bark, is when you peel it this time of year before the leaves open and after the leaves drop. So from October till about mid-May, if you peel the bark off the tree, you get to actually play with that phloem and scrape it off and then expose it to sunlight. And the longer it's exposed to sunlight, the darker it gets. It can get almost black because it's melanin, right? It's a reaction in the phloem to protect itself from the sun. So add the fact that after about 30 to 40 years, the tree will actually regrow its bark again. If you peel a standing birch that is about, let's say 10 inches in diameter, that tree we could roughly say is about 40 years old. When that 40-year-old tree gets peeled to make a basket or gauntlets or cuffs, my dog is screaming and chasing the cat, whatever it may be, in another 40 to 50 years, it will actually grow new bark. It will actually regrow it over time. Yes, you're disfiguring the tree. Yes, you're harming the tree, but we accept that because it doesn't kill the tree and genetics can continue for multiple generations. This is that whole 7 generations talk that we have about sustainability. This is a part of it. We accept that we are causing harm. Anishinaabe, in our worldview, understand that we cause harm because we take lives and we disfigure beings to take care of ourselves and to make our world more beautiful from our lens. So that's the last slide. That's really the main thing I was going to show you. This is like a winnowing tray that a friend of mine made for winnowing monomen. We use it by bouncing it up and down with the monomen inside after we dance it. And inside, because it was made for my friend Awabishko Maingan, the friend who made this for Awabishko Maingan put a wolf in there because that's his name, the pale wolf. And then also some floral designs along the edges. It's absolutely stunning. I just have this here as an example. We will be making some simple baskets. And then if we have time that day on Saturday, we will also make macaque baskets, which I don't have an image in here for some reason. I thought I did have an image of a macaque in here, but that's that classic trapezoidal, round-rimmed, square-bottom basket that many of us see all the time in Ojibwe craft shops and such. So with all that, I'm going to stop sharing. I kind of went over my time. I apologize, Chris. But yeah, that's about it for me. I'm going to check to see if there's any comments or questions.
Yeah,
really
anyone got any
quickly?
questions for Caleb? Feel free to just unmute yourself and jump in if you do about any of that.
I got a whole one from a tree that came down. It's like a barrel of birch bark. So we want to use the freshest bark possible when working with baskets. We don't want to use anything that came off of a tree several weeks ago or even a few years ago. The longer that bark has been off the longer that tree has been dead, the more likely that bark has been infiltrated by fungi. And when you start holding up to the light, if you can see any light through that bark, it's not really of any use outside of fire lighting and making things like birch tar, which is a whole other thing that we can get into later in the course. As the year goes, we can make some birch tar in one of our programs because it's a really cool adhesive that you can work with. So, like instead of using spruce gum, you can use the tar from the birch bark, but it takes a lot of work. Outside of that, dead bark doesn't have a lot of use for us for basket making. You want to use freshly peeled bark. It can be dried. Like once we peel bark off a tree, we can store it for up to 30 or 40 years before we use it, but it can't come off of a tree that's been dead already. That's the main thing. Sky, do you have your hand up?
Yeah, I just wanted to show it to you. It's really cool.
Sure.
So I found it. Here, I'll show it to you. It's like, oh my goodness, because the
I
thing,
can't see you.
1 second, let me just move this. Um, oh, let's just do this. Okay. So do you see what I mean? It's a total
Yep.
tube.
Yep.
Yeah, and it's so cool. Me and my daughter found it and she insisted I keep it. It was pretty cool.
So that's kind of that's the reason that happens is actually really cool. The birch wood is one of the most rot prone woods on the planet. Almost every fungi that interacts with birch trees loves it when they die because they can start eating almost immediately. But the bark has so much betula oil in it that it's actually water resistant to waterproof, hence us being able to make birch bark baskets that hold water, birch bark canoes that float on the water. So the bark is actually more rot proof than the wood is. So that's a great example of that. That's a beautiful example, but that's actually fairly common. You can often find like a birch stump in the woods and then kick it and all the wood dissolves into mulch and then the bark comes off in one chunk with a couple of cracks in it. That's a really great example of it though. That's incredible, Sky. Is it the same process to make a birch bark moose call? Yes. So when you peel the bark off the tree, you then roll it into a cone shape and start to stitch the cone together to hold it together. Yeah, that's the same process. It's just like birch bark basket making. So depending on how much bark I'm able to get the week before we get together. So that's really the only cap off I have about what I'm willing to promise everybody for the workshop is I'm peeling the week before we all get together and what I'm able to get is what I'm able to get because of the conditions we're dealing with where I'm going peeling. You could potentially make a birch bark moose call. My birch bark moose calls never get longer than like my hand. A lot of people make these real big megaphones, and don't get me wrong, that does help to an extent, but that wasn't how our ancestors made them. Our ancestors make them to be very portable so they can carry them long distances, and we wouldn't be carrying these massive cones that we use today. But yeah, it's just rolling a cone and then stitching the seam together so it all holds together.
Why don't we just take a quick little 5-minute washroom tea break or whatever? So we'll meet back in 5 and we'll do a little bit of bird language to close out our night.
Heck yeah.
And she gave me a whole bunch of extra, so I'm gonna be able to make more like thinner pieces.
Amazing, Kathy.
Yeah, it was
Thanks for
awesome.
sharing.
Very
Congratulations. That's so fun.
satisfying.
Yeah, we're definitely going to get into doing that with the group at some of the in-person sessions. So we'll probably make rope from a whole bunch of different plant materials and tree materials over the next few months. So
I'm really curious about the nettle fiber because of the bags that we used to make, and probably somebody's still making them, but you know, just how fine and flexible that fiber is.
it's
Beautiful.
a phenomenal one to work with.
I
Yeah.
really want to work with that someday.
Nice.
So do a 5-day one and I'll come home for it.
All right, we'll figure out a way to make that happen.
Yeah.
Might have to wait until next year, but we're
I was looking at coming this time, like in a couple of weeks, but I just couldn't do it. So one of these
all right,
days.
so let's wrap up with so I should have mentioned this on the group, but I want everybody to grab a notebook and a pen if you got it handy. And we're gonna do a little pop quiz quickly right here. We're gonna do a bird call pop quiz. So everybody grab a notebook. And I'm going to play a handful of fairly common birds. I suspect most of these you could find out west as well. Maybe not every one of them, but most of them probably are on the west coast. And we're going to see how well people do with some of these fairly common bird calls. So, yeah, I'm going to get you to number them in order. We'll play them through, and then we'll come back and talk about them afterwards. All right, everybody ready? Got your notebook? Okay, bird number 1 is going to be, hold on, this one right here. It's a very common bird. In fact, all of you folks in Ontario, if you stepped out your door right now, that bird is probably singing within earshot of you in this moment of your front door. Okay, that's number 1. Number 2 is going to be this one right here. Actually, let's do this one. Love that call. Okay, that was number 2. Number 3 is going to be, oops, hold on. Number 3 is going to be this one right here. These ones just got north to Muskoka just the last couple days on that. Okay, that's number 3. Number 4 is going to be another very common bird. Okay, number 5. Number 6. And number 7 will be, let's see, let's do this one here. These ones are singing like crazy like now. All right, I'm curious who right off the bat is like, I didn't have a clue who any of them were. Anyone in that camp? All right, we're going to go through them one at a time. You can unmute yourself or you can write it in the chat. So bird number 1, and let me play it again. Actually, don't put it in the chat quite yet. Let me play it, and then we'll chat about who we think it is. So here was our first bird again. Okay, who is it? Put it in the chat or unmute yourself.
Am I allowed to guess?
Yeah, go
It's a
for it.
robin.
Batman's partner. Nice, Gord. Ben's
Yeah.
got it there. Yeah, that's our classic robin. I always like to think of the robin's call as it's saying like, here I am. Where are you? Where are you? Where are you? Here I am. Here I am. Where are you? And the one I always thought, because like I literally didn't learn the robin's call until I was in my 20s. And I remember having this really humbling moment of being like, oh my goodness, I've been listening to robins sing for 20 years in my front lawn. How is it even possible that I don't know what their call is? I felt pretty silly in that moment. And then it was also a cool wake up call to actually just be more observant of what's going on around me. So I always feel like the robin is saying like, hey, Chris, I'm right here. Where are you? I'm right in front of you, Chris. Where the heck are you? You don't even know my call. Where are you, Chris? I'm right here. So that's my little trick for remembering the robin. Here I am. Where are you? So number 1 was the robin. Let me play number 2 and then we'll see who we had thought. one takes its time. Who is that lovely, mysterious coo?
Oh, Tammy got it.
Nice. Yeah, that's our morning dove. Right? Fairly common one there. Okay, number 3 was let's see. Number 3. Oh, where are you? There we go.
Conqueree.
Conqueree.
Red-winged blackbird.
Yeah, nice. That's our red-winged blackbirds returning to the wetland right now. That big conqueree. Conqueree.
Love those.
Mm-hmm.
The beach I walk at, they're all over the, like away from the shore. There's kind of a wetlandy area, and it's nice to be by the ocean and then also hear them.
Awesome. Okay, let's see. Number 4. I'm curious who got this one. This is probably one of the harder ones, even though it's a fairly common one. Anyone get that one? Ooh, Patty, close. Oriole. It's related to the Oriole, but it's not an Oriole.
Like a finch, a goldfinch.
Nope, not a goldfinch. That one's actually our song sparrow. And there's something really distinct about the song sparrow call. It always starts with like 2 or 3 distinct notes and then a little trill. So it's like dee 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 dee. So I'm gonna play it again and see if you can pick up on that cadence. Because once you pick up on that cadence, that's like the cue for me that it's the song sparrow. So 2 or 3 very distinct notes followed by a bit of a trill. So I'm gonna start that one from the beginning and see if you can hear what I'm talking about. Do you notice that there is like beep, 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 kind of thing?
Yeah.
Yeah. So that like 2 or 3 call notes with that little trill, that's our song sparrow.
Sorry,
thing,
Chris,
quick thing.
with that one, is there any difference between the male and the female? What's it called?
Trying to think, do the females sing that same song or is it just the males that sing? I actually don't know the answer to that question. That's a good question. I want to say that it's the same song. And then as I say, like generally all the other voices that those song sparrows make, I would say are the same because they have a few different sounds they make. I'm trying to think whether the females actually sing the song or whether only the males do. And I'm actually not 100% sure. Do you know, Caleb?
I honestly don't know because I don't. The song sparrow is so common where I am that I kind of almost tune them out most of the time. So I never actually like observe them and look at them hard enough to actually like see which one's singing.
Yeah.
So I feel kind of dumb right now.
Good question, Gordon. You got us stumped. I don't know if anyone else knows on here.
I don't know, but I did want to point out that the name for them in Anishinaabe Moan is Nagamoan, and that Moan you also hear in like Anishinaabe Moan or like Jaganashi Moan, the way that they talk. Moan is talking about the way that something is speaking. And so it's talking about how they're very talkative ones and how they communicate and they sing. So it's in their name, Song Sparrow. It's in their name in our language as well. How they speak all the time.
Cool. Okay, what was our next one there? Okay, our next one was what's going? I love that call.
I have a question mark next to what I thought it was, so I'm not sure.
Did you put it in the chat? I don't see it.
Oh yeah, Tammy. That was my guess, Tammy.
Oh, Blue Jay. Cool. No, it's not. That's actually the pileated woodpecker. The pileated is the really big, tall woodpecker. Although let's play Blue Jay because I can see there can be some similar notes. They're actually very similar, so I can see why you would mix those up. Then I don't think that's actually like they're pretty close. Blue Jay often makes like a bit of a call, like sneak, sneak. It has a few different voices though, so let me hit up a Blue Jay here to compare.
So if you think about how that woodpecker sounded, it's laughing really hard, right?
Right.
just like Woody Woodpecker. They based the
Gotcha.
Woody Woodpecker character off of a pileated woodpecker, using that laughter as his catchphrase laughter.
Cool. So I'm going to play the blue jay here. You recognize that one now, Ben?
Yeah. Kind of an ugly call.
Well, it's also in their name as well. Odidence. Like if you listen to a blue jay, they're going dee-dance, dee-dance, odidence, dee-dance. And the translation that I heard from one speaker was, it translates into the language as well. It's a lot of the birds' names and animals' names are automatopoeias. They sound like what their name is. Like they sound like their name, like gaw gaw geen for a raven, go ko ko for a barred owl, odidence for a blue jay. But they all also are words, right? They're automatopoeias, but they're also like words. Odidence means they're at odds with everybody. Like they're the jerks in the woods. They're the ones messing with everyone.
I'll go back and I'll play the pileated now just to compare it. So again, actually, here's the jay again, right? And then here's that pileated woodpecker, the big woody woodpecker. Awesome. Okay, number 6 was this one right here. Hold on. Okay, number 6. Actually, kind of similar to the woodpecker as well, but a little slower.
Deeper.
Did anyone get that one? I'm going to share my screen just in case folks don't know what this one looks like. So this is the nuthatch, the white-breasted nuthatch. You often see these guys in with the chickadees. And the way I remember both the nuthatches is they're the nasally nuthatches. So think about it, it's a bird making a call, but it has a cold and it's kind of congested. So see if you can hear that kind of nasally, like meh, meh. It's kind of like it's got this squeak, like it's almost sick, and it's got a bunch of boogers in its nose. So see if you can hear that. Kind of hear what I mean about that nasaliness? And the two nuthatches we have around here, this one actually looks a lot like a chickadee, and I think people actually mix them up with chickadees all the time because they're often flying with the chickadees. Like there'll be a whole flock of chickadees, and there'll be like one of these white-breasted nuthatches in it. The other one is that's not what I wanted to go. How do I search? Let me put a nuthatch. So we have the white-breasted nuthatch, and we also have the red-breasted. And its call is a little bit different, but it has that nasally thing too. So the red-breasted is a little bit smaller, if you recognize this one. Also often in with chickadees. And listen to this one to hear if you can still hear that nasaliness.
I don't know if it's just me. I'm not getting any audio for your birds.
Oh, you know what? It's probably okay. Give me a second here. I think I know what I need to do. I gotta just go back to the audio only. Advanced computer audio share. Okay, let me play that again. Hear what I mean? How that one's nasally too? So we got the nasally nuthatches. And then our very last one that we're going to throw into the mix here. I love this. This is like probably one of my favorite calls in the springtime. And it is, where is it? Come on. Scrolling through here. Okay. Anyone got that one?
Gord has a guess.
Nice. Yeah, Gord had that one. So that's our cardinal. So the way I remember the cardinal call is cardinals are bright red, like a laser beam. And to me, cardinals sound like a laser gun. Like, did anyone ever play laser tag as a kid, where you shoot the little laser tags, you get that like pew pew pew, or imagine like Star Trek and like them shooting like the pew pew, and then you listen to the Cardinals song and it's like pew 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 pew. So I think about the red bird that looks like a laser beam, and it's making the laser-like sound. So listen to this one and see if you can hear the laser sound in it. Hold on.
Mm.
Everyone hear the laser?
Absolutely.
So I'll share the link in the chat to the website I'm using for this. One of them is called birdlanguage.com. So I just threw that in the chat. And then the other one is just called All About Birds. And they're two great sites for learning about birds and their calls. We're out of time for tonight, so we didn't quite get where I wanted to go, but that's okay. We'll pick up the thread next month online, and we're going to do a bunch of this in person. But maybe I'll just share one quick closing story in our few minutes here. So bird language was one of those things that blew my mind away when I realized what it was. I've always loved listening to the birds and watching the birds. I feel like there's just, I heard someone say once that, one of the gifts of the birds is they help lift the human mind and the human spirit. And we can be having a rough day. We can be all caught up in our head and our thoughts. And then you'll hear a beautiful bird call and it just takes you out of your head and connects you with the land. So I've always thought of them as these just real beautiful beings for connecting us with the land, getting us out of our own heads. But they also have this amazing ability to extend our awareness way beyond what we can actually see and hear ourselves. The birds being able to fly up high have this bird's eye view on the world, and we can tap into what their perspective if we learn to understand what are they actually singing about. And I was really into like naturalist and ecology stuff for a number of years, and I got really into like learning, well, what are the birds' calls? But again, it never even occurred to me that the birds might actually be singing about something beyond just making a pretty sound. And I had this revelation moment when I was in college. A buddy of mine, a guy named Skeet Sutherland, some of you met him, and me and him were out on a hike fishing one day, and we're up on this trail, and all of a sudden Skeets looks at me and he's like, "Hey, hide quick!" And I'm like, "What?" He's like, "Yeah, just hide." So we duck into the bushes and we go all quiet, and we're sitting there, and like 3-4 minutes go by and like nothing's happening, and I'm looking at him like, "Skeet, what's going on here?" And he's like, "Shh, just be quiet." All of a sudden, like literally like 5-6 minutes later, this couple comes walking up the trail with their dog, and they walk right past us and they go check out this little pond, and then they turn around and walk out and leave. um and they go away, and I was like, "Wow, how did you hear them from so far away?" And he's like, "No, I didn't hear them, it was the birds." And I was just like, in that moment, it was like mind-blowing for me. Like, what do you mean the birds? Like, the birds literally told him those people were coming from 5 minutes away. We couldn't physically hear the people yet, but the birds started singing about the people moving through the woods. So interpretive bird language is actually learning to listen to the birds and know, like, are they singing about a predator? Are they singing about the weather? Is it just a little scuffle between two birds because it's male to male aggression? And just like tracking, I feel like in our online sessions and in person, we've been trying to open up this idea that, tracking is like reading a book. So learning what animal made the track is one small part of the picture, because that animal is a living being that's telling a story with its life. And when you become a tracker, those tracks become like the letters in the alphabet. When you string them together, you're actually reading the chapter of that animal's life and how it interacts with the landscape around it. Bird language becomes the same thing. Bird language now becomes another type of alphabet that we're able to weave into our knowledge of the land. And when we learn to, one, know who the bird is, that's like the first layer of it. But the part that really excites me is like, what's the bird telling me? It's telling me that the weather, even though it's a sunny day today, the bird might be telling me that it's going to be pouring rain 3 hours from now, even though it's beautiful and sunny right now. And that was just mind blowing for me when I had that open up for me. And I feel like I still have a ton to learn on it. But I integrate bird language into the way I walk through the woods all the time, especially when I'm hunting. Um, I've had blue jays tell me where the deer are before when I'm hunting. It's absolutely amazing. And I also know that the birds have told the deer where I am on many occasions as well. And I didn't see the deer because of the bird. And part of what we teach when we get into like advanced kind of stalking and awareness and movement, and I'm sure Caleb and I will do a little bit of this during the in-person as well. When we're moving through the woods, we want to reduce that ripple that we throw out, which means we want to move in a way that the birds aren't concerned about us and they're not telling everything where we are. And then we want to be able to listen further out to the birds and pick up those things. So we basically, we can perceive further than the ripple that we actually put out. And that's what actually allows us to get close to wildlife. So bird language is a phenomenal, fascinating world to dive into. And I think an essential part of how humans move through the world for most of human history. And most people today don't even realize that it exists other than pretty calls. So I'll leave it there for now. Next online class, we'll make sure that we allow a bit more time to dive into that. And we're definitely going to dive in it during the in-person stuff. Caleb, you have any closing words you want to share there before we break?
No, I said a lot already tonight, so I want to make sure we got some room for everybody to head home, head back to their days. I will say that like the bird language is one of the most important skills that I've been learning over the years, and only realizing what I didn't know beforehand. So when Chris says like this is like an important step, he's underplaying how important it is. It's a really like they can tell you about the weather, to predators that you may not be aware of in your neighborhood, to everything. Everything. So Midwest for bringing that up tonight, Chris. Thank you for bringing this and organizing this part of the evening.
Oh. And Gord, it's not just you. Yes, cardinals very classically sing from the tops of trees. As we start to get into birds, we'll really start to dive into their habitat and their habitat niches and where you'll find them and see them. We'll do a bunch of stuff on birds in the coming months, especially during the in-persons. But yeah, we'll leave it there for tonight, everybody. Miigwech, Bama P, and we'll see you all soon.
Thanks, Chris.
Iguaminum.